past decades, their population has doubled. They've thrived at odds with nature, defying physics and logic to make the surreal, unthinkable, and insanely stupid appear mundane. With their strange, erratic behaviors and unusual lifestyle, we will be taking a look at one of the most documented and least understood species of our time, humans. Welcome to Wacky Wildlife. This bustling, brash landscape is where we can find our subjects. They are densely packed in an area devoid of vegetation and variety, making it a wonder as to where they find their food. While they have claimed to be near the top of the food chain, it is hard to classify the somewhat edible substances the majority consumes as food. This species, while having self-classified as the most intelligent animal, seems to have developed abnormal, counterintuitive eating habits, feeding up to 12 times a day on unrecognizable, barely edible substances. Here we see a horde of these young mammals headed into the same shelter. Unlike most mammals, the young are not raised by their parents. Shortly after birth, in fact, they are made to spend most of their time in an enclosure with other younglings, and a few mature humans are unlucky enough to be assigned the task of maintaining order within the enclosure. The young animals raised in this establishment seem to be devoid of basic reasoning, joy, and sanity. This cruel forced habitat turns some wild and abusive. Desperate for affection, some seem to turn even to inanimate objects, looking for love.
Oh my god, I love you like video. Aww. Yeah. My baby. Can I kiss it too?
The reasons for this strange, inhuman treatment of younglings are still speculated upon, and today we will attempt to discover the world within this building by following a young fledgling through their day. Here we have spotted our subject exiting a large underground tunnel, one of many interconnected subterranean passageways that humans have excavated for efficient travel. We follow our subject through concrete-encrusted grounds, desolate of any other species, with the exception of bacteria and vermin. The humans here are bizarrely calm, given their turbulent surroundings, cornered by unnaturally speedy predators that can trample them within seconds. As the youngster enters a dwelling, we get some hints as to how these humans source their nutrition. The covers of these foods are preternaturally bright and neon, presumably to be inviting. On further inspection, these items contain fabricated ingredients having low to no nutritional value, perhaps explaining why the younglings are sluggishly lethargic, while their brain development seems to be stunted. The child, like up to 90% of the surrounding Homo sapiens, is absorbed by a small, light emanating rectangle on his palm as he walks toward his destination. He walks into the shelter to be greeted by fully grown, weaponized females, who presumably record his entrance on their machinery. Every one of these young children in the shelter have their presence documented and are given a strict schedule to adhere to. They are assigned fruitless, monotonous tasks to be completing for every second of the large chunk of their day they spend in this building. While this places an unnatural and heavy mental burden, these adolescents are used to having their self-autonomy denied. Most don't even question the requirement to request the authorities solely to answer nature's call. Once inside, we find our subject exiting a small metal box that has carried him approximately 120 feet vertically upwards within 30 seconds. The reasons for these spectacular inventions stem from the burgeoning population of humans, requiring multi-storied habitats to contain them all. Whimsically descending yet another vertical pathway, it seems our subject refuses to conform to the constrictive, lock-up scheduling thrust upon these young creatures. While other students are penned in their respective enclosures, their freedoms restricted as far as to even being told where to sit, he opts instead to linger in the corridors. Arranging his few belongings, we see him take the large, vibrant bundle off his back, a feature giving him a small distinction from the other mammals around him. He unravels the bundle to reveal a large tool carved of wood. The main purpose of this tool is to create quaint, melodic sounds, often in an attempt to attract potential mates and pack members. Bundling his stool back up, he spreads out to rest under the fluorescent luminescence on the cold hard surface. This is perhaps as a byproduct of poor nutrition and sleep deprivation, which is a modern and increasingly widespread occurrence within saplings of this tender age. Commanded by the sound of a buzz, the well-programmed younglings exit their coops and crowd the halls. Like robots, they head in herds to their next location, sometimes stopping, albeit briefly, to greet an acquaintance and exchange polite physical gestures, such as the slapping of their open palms or bumping of their clenched paws. All through this, our subject has different priorities, waiting at the side of a hallway until he is approached by a female. Exchanging these spasm-like headshakes and finger convulsions, along with extra-wide smiles, are characteristic of the human mating ritual. Touching the lips together is considered a sacred and private courtship method, and to some, unfathomable as public conduct. Yet, these adolescent-filled shelters are breeding grounds for such public displays. Initially, this behavior was thought to aid in climbing the social hierarchy, with people who find more mates being higher on the social pyramid and seen as the fittest contenders. Yet, survival of the fittest seems inapplicable under these circumstances, with our subject's copulation partner a prime example of the contemporary and widespread settle, don't select phenomenon. Instead of being a driver in the social stratification, these small displays of affection seem to be just another small distraction that these young, mistreated fledglings use to try and get through their claustrophobically supervised day. A short while later, we follow our subject entering the feeding room, known as the cafeteria, where once again, his entrance is documented. This cafeteria occupies an entire story of the shelter and is dedicated to providing sustenance and a feeding area to the younglings. They have only a small window built into their unnatural, rigid schedules to eat, so that even if they are famished or satiated, they must devour their food at the same bell every day. However, navigating the socially divided feeding areas typically takes priority over acquiring sustenance. Here, we follow as our subject, after obligatorily greeting the members of his pack, leaves by his lonesome to scavenge. Even with the large population and limited reserves in this shelter, there isn't much competition amongst these obediently inculcated children, as they are untrained in foraging and hunting. They fall in line and don't brawl when served measly portions of food. Here, our subject, brushing off a sophisticatedly prepared meal and instead picking up a deleterious snack, is off to find his mate to dine with. Having located her, he consumes his meal in a mannerly fashion, all while exchanging incomprehensible gestures with his mate. Up until high noon, all our younglings' feed has consisted of are the unrecognizable contents of a can known as Arizona and a breaded dairy stick. In concern, his mate has departed to scavenge more delectable options. Here, just like in most other species and pairings, the female proves superior in all aspects, including intelligence, picking plants to add to the nutritional value. Trying unsuccessfully at first to get her mate to swallow a single bite, her lustful charm proves too powerful to resist. Now that it is midday and our subject has had a rest and his noon feeding, he seems about ready to begin on his assigned tasks for the day. He is stopped for a brief talk with the chief of this room, the matured human that is a caretaker and task assigner for the young fledglings. The power dynamic is immediately noticeable, with the chief not even needing to rise in stature to assert his dominance, directing those under his care with his mere lightly spoken commands. However, when instructing his protege, it seems his commands are ignored, and fraternizing with the pack is resumed to be a prime concern. Apart from embedding obedience and a strict code of conduct, catalyzing socialization seems to be a main goal of trapping younglings in these enclosures. Learning to interact and coexist with beings of their own age and succumb to authority will make them smoothly functioning cogs in the well-oiled machine of human bureaucracy. With the passage of time, when the sun is almost setting, the children are allowed to exit the rigid confines of the shelter and enjoy the few moments of freedom they are permitted before they are obligated to return. However, some of the pack display Stockholm Syndrome-like deranged behavior, choosing to stay under the strict scrutiny of the shelter, perhaps in pursuit of forging bonds, killing time, or for masochistic enjoyment. With this terrifying warning cry yelled out from across the chamber, we find out that the massive bags he and his partner were carrying are filled with the bandages to protect their limbs as they try to pummel their paws at each other with all their force. Our subject seems to be instructing people on how to conduct this strenuous activity, with some intently focused on their training, and others dallying and mingling with the pack. Given the unruliness of this affair, a fight breaks out to establish a chain of command, but ends quickly when they realize the futility of fighting and choose to embrace each other instead.
How's it going, buddy? How's it going, buddy?
Instead, they have turned together against the documenter, rightful in their hatred of someone who has assumed the power to record and judge the humans as they see fit. United by a common enemy, all three of our subjects have strengthened their bond, and here, our observing of their lives must come to an end.
How about I fight you? Yeah!
Our day through the eyes of our subject has left us with more questions than answers, showing us how these animals don't just live to survive and procreate, but are a strange, incomprehensible, and magical species, taking pleasure in uncanny, enigmatic activities and pursuits, forging bonds under pressure, transcending limits, and relying on their communities and interconnectedness to thrive.